The night Seo Tai-jun gave away 4 black credit cards, no one saw it coming. Not the rivals who feared his name, not the allies who owed him favors, not the 3 women who believed they understood exactly what kind of man he was, and certainly not the woman in his kitchen, the one who burned banana bread and hummed off-key while mopping his floors. Seo Tai-jun could silence a room by walking into it. Power, money, control, he had all of it. But one thing stayed beyond his reach, someone who saw him as a person, not an account, not a weapon. That night, after the worst dinner of his year, he made a decision. 4 women, 4 black cards. No rules, no limits. Just freedom and the truth that always follows it. He expected to be surprised by one of them. He never expected it to be her. The woman who thought the card was a termination notice, who spent it on rice diapers and 200 hot dogs, who reminded the most dangerous man in New York what it felt like to be human. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now. What city are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You do not want to miss where this story goes. The warehouse on the edge of Red Hook smelled like rust and rain. It always did this time of night. Seo Tai-jun stood near the far wall, hands in his pockets, jacket pressed and clean despite the hour. Around him, the space was dim. A single overhead light swung slightly in the draft, and in the center of that light, a man knelt on the concrete floor. He'd been with the organization for 6 years, trusted, reliable, or so everyone thought. "You sold the Midtown route," Tai-jun said. His voice was low, almost conversational. That was the part people always found most unnerving, not the anger, the calm. 3 names, to Park's people. The man opened his mouth. "Don't." Tai-jun didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I didn't ask a question." Daniel stood near the door, arms folded, expression unreadable. 2 other men in the room didn't move. It was over in minutes. On the drive back to Manhattan, the city blurred past in streaks of yellow and white. Tai-jun sat in the backseat window, cracked, saying nothing. Daniel watched him from the corner of his eye. "Dinner with Vivienne is at 8, Daniel said finally. "Aurelius, private room." Tai-jun didn't respond, just watched the bridge lights slide past overhead. "Sir?" "I heard you." Aurelius was everything a dinner like this was supposed to be. Candlelight, white tablecloths, a wine list that cost more than most people's rent, the kind of place designed to make people feel important just by walking through the door. Vivienne Blake knew how to use a room like this. She arrived 7 minutes late, not enough to be rude, just enough to be noticed. Black dress, perfect hair, the particular smile she reserved for occasions when she wanted something. She hugged him like they'd never been apart. "You look tired," she said, settling across from him. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine." "You're always fine." She touched his hand briefly. "That's the problem." For the first hour, it was almost good. Easy conversation, old memories, the comfortable rhythm of 2 people who knew each other well. Tai-jun let himself relax slightly. Then the dessert arrived. Vivienne picked up her phone. Not to check it, to position it. She angled the camera toward the plate, small adjustment tilt of the wrist, then pulled Tai-jun into frame with a smile that had clearly been practiced. "Don't," he said. "It's just a photo." "Vivienne, you're so serious." She posted it anyway, then set the phone face up on the table so he could watch the likes accumulate in real time. "My followers love these little moments." He looked at the screen. The caption read, "Dinner with my favorite ex. Some things never change." He put down his fork. "I miss you," she said, refilling her glass. "And I miss the trips. Remember Tuscany? You chartered that whole villa for a week." She looked at him over the rim. "We were good together." Tai-jun was quiet for a moment. Then, "You've mentioned the villa twice tonight." "I mentioned it once." "You mentioned it, the helicopter and the Maldives, in the same sentence." Vivienne smiled like she'd been caught doing something charming rather than calculated. "Can a person be nostalgic?" "Sure." He folded his napkin and placed it on the table. But you're not nostalgic about me. You're nostalgic about the account. The smile didn't disappear. It just became something sharper. She didn't deny it. The penthouse was dark when he got home. He didn't bother with the lights, dropped his jacket onto the armchair, and stood at the window looking out at New York. 43 floors down, the city moved like it always did, indifferent, brilliant, endlessly alive. Daniel appeared in the doorway, jacket off, glass of water in hand. How was dinner? She posted a photo before the main course arrived. Daniel set the water down. I'll cancel the reservation she already made for next month. She already made another one. Before tonight's dinner ended, I got the notification while you were still at the table. Taejun almost laughed. Almost. He dropped into the chair, pressed 2 fingers to his temple. People don't see me anymore, Daniel. They see the account, the cars, the access. He stared at the ceiling. When was the last time someone looked at me and saw a person? Daniel said nothing. 9 years as Taejun's right hand had taught him when silence was the correct answer. I'm tired of performing. Taejun sat up straight, and then the way his best and worst ideas always arrived all at once. I want to do something. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. Sir, every time you start a sentence that way, 4 women, 4 black cards. Taejun was already thinking it through the way he thought through every operation, methodical even when the idea was anything but. No instructions, no limit. 3 days. I watch what each of them does with it. That's Vivienne, Cassandra, Raina, a pause, and Arya. Daniel blinked. Arya, the woman currently asleep 2 floors below us. The one who strongly suggested last Tuesday that you'd violated the kitchen organization system. She called it a violation of kitchen order. Because you moved the spice rack 6 inches. She's the only person in my life who has never asked me for anything, Taejun said quietly. Never smiled differently when she needed something. Never adjusted her behavior when I walked in. He looked at Daniel. I want to see what she does when power is in her hands. Daniel picked up the water glass, set it down again. And if it backfires, then I'll have learned something. You always say that. I'm always right. The envelopes arrived before sunrise, black, heavy, names written in silver ink by hand. Taejun arranged them on the table like pieces on a board. Cassandra arrived first, punctual, blazer sharp, already checking her calendar as she walked in. She accepted the envelope with one raised eyebrow and the expression of someone calculating angles before she'd even opened it. Vivienne came next, unhurried. She recognized the envelope before she touched it, smiled like she'd been expecting it all along. Raina arrived with enthusiasm she didn't try to hide, held the card up to the light like it might be counterfeit, then laughed when she confirmed it wasn't. Then Arya walked in from the kitchen side, apron on, hands dusted with flour. She looked at the black envelope the way most people look at a summons. Am I fired? It's a gift, Taejun said. She opened it slowly, saw the card, looked up. Sir. She tilted her head. I gave you burnt banana bread yesterday. Are you feeling okay? Just take it, Arya. But what am I supposed to do with it? Whatever you want. 3 days, no limit. She stared at the card a moment longer, then tucked it carefully into her apron pocket with the quiet reverence of someone handling something they didn't entirely trust. Taejun watched her walk back toward the kitchen, heard her humming resume almost immediately slightly off-key, something vaguely country, and he felt for one strange second that of all 4 envelopes he'd handed out that morning, that one mattered most. He just didn't know why yet. The first reports came in before noon. Daniel stood at the kitchen island, tablet in hand, reading through the transaction feed with the practiced neutrality of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by anything. Taejun sat across from him, coffee untouched, waiting. Vivienne's card first, Daniel said. Private jet charter, Teterboro to Miami, filed under business travel. He scrolled. Current location tag on her Instagram story is South Beach. Poolside. Taejun said nothing. Cassandra, Bergdorf Goodman, 3rd floor. Total spend so far $14,200. $6,000 of that was footwear. Footwear. 3 pairs. Same afternoon. Taejun picked up his coffee. Put it down again without drinking. Raina retained an event planning firm this morning. Full service package. She's planning a gala theme is contemporary elegance, which apparently requires custom floral installations and a live string quartet. Daniel paused. She's already sent digital invitations to roughly 200 guests. The event is 3 weeks away. The card expires in 3 days. She's billing the initial deposit now and expecting the rest to follow. Daniel looked up briefly. She's not wrong about how this usually works. Taejun leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. Predictable, he said. Not with judgment, just recognition. Like reading a report he'd already written in his head. Daniel scrolled further. His expression shifted not dramatically, but Taejun had known this man for 9 years. An aria. A pause. Neighborhood grocery store. 2 visits, one yesterday evening, one early this morning. Daniel read carefully. Rice, canned goods, poster paint, brushes, craft paper, diapers size 2 and size 4, secondhand toys from a resale shop on Atlantic Avenue. Another pause. And 200 hot dogs. The room went quiet. Taejun slowly turned to look at his assistant. Hot dogs. 200. Plus buns, condiments, and serving supplies. He stopped. What else? A cargo van, rented this afternoon, listed purpose on the rental agreement. Daniel tilted the tablet slightly, reading carefully. Supplies for community event. Taejun was still for a moment. Then he stood up. Where? He drove himself. That alone would have alarmed anyone who knew him well. Seo Taejun did not drive himself places. He had people for that people whose entire job was to exist between him and the world. But he took the keys from the hook by the door without a word, and Daniel, to his credit, only watched without comment. The address was in Brooklyn. A residential street, narrow tree lined the buildings, modest but well kept. Window boxes with flowers. Kids' drawings taped inside glass. The kind of block that existed at a complete remove from the world Taejun moved through every day. He parked across the street and sat. The cargo van was already there, rear doors open. And Arya was moving in and out of a low brick building, carrying colorful boxes stacked to her chin, talking over her shoulder to someone inside. She wore an old t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled up messily, a streak of what looked like purple poster paint across her left forearm. Above the entrance, a hand-painted sign read, Hope House Shelter and Support. Taejun watched for a long moment. Then he got out of the car. The woman at the front desk had kind eyes and the particular stillness of someone who'd seen everything and chosen to remain warm anyway. Good afternoon, Taejun said. My name is Seo Taejun. I heard about the work being done here and I'd like to help. The woman studied him for exactly 3 seconds, not with suspicion, with assessment. The kind of look that measured people accurately on the first try. I'm Margaret, she said. Director. She smiled. We're having a special afternoon for the children today, thanks to a very generous young woman. What a coincidence that you should stop by. She paused just slightly. Come on through. She led him down a hallway painted in colors that had been chosen by someone who believed children deserved brightness. Through a door at the end, the hallway opened into a courtyard, and Taejun stopped walking. There were perhaps 20 children running, painting, chasing balloons, arguing passionately over crayon colors, tables covered in bright paper, music from a small Bluetooth speaker that someone had balanced on a window ledge, streamers tied to a fence that kept coming loose and had to be retied every few minutes, and in the center of all of it, Arya. She was wearing a clown costume, yellow and blue stripes, enormous red shoes that made a soft thwacking sound against the pavement every time she moved. A round rubber nose she kept pushing up when it slid. She was crouched in the middle of a semicircle of children attempting to twist a long balloon into the shape of a dog. The balloon exploded. The children screamed with laughter. Arya pulled a fragment of balloon out of her hair, looked at what remained in her hands, and said with complete seriousness, "Okay, that one became a cloud. Let's try the dog again. Less pressure, more hope, more laughter." She laughed too full and unguarded, the kind of laugh that had no performance in it. Taijin leaned against the wall near the gate and watched. A few minutes later, a small girl at the edge of the group caught her foot on an uneven stone and went down hard. The crying started immediately, sharp, startled. Arya was there before the sound had finished. She dropped everything, crossed the courtyard in 4 steps, knelt on the concrete without hesitation, rubber nose and all. "Hey!" Her voice changed completely, still warm but quieter now, focused. She gently took the girl's hands and looked her over. "I see you. Tell me where it hurts." "My knee," the girl sobbed. "Let me see." Arya examined the scrape carefully, then reached into the front pocket of the clown suit and produced a bandage bright purple with small gold stars. She pressed it gently into place. "There, you've got accelerated healing powers now, but it only activates with 3 jumps." The girl looked up, tear-streaked, skeptical. 3 jumps, Arya confirmed very seriously. The girl jumped, once, twice, 3 times. Arya clapped like she'd witnessed something extraordinary. "There it is. You feel that?" The girl nodded, already smiling. Taejun felt something tighten in his chest. Not unpleasant, unfamiliar. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen someone give another person their complete attention without wanting anything back. In his world, attention was currency. Every gesture calculated, every kindness an investment. This was something else entirely. "You must be Mr. Seo." He turned. A young woman, one of the helpers from the look of it, was smiling at him. "Margaret mentioned you'd come to help. Great timing. We're about to start the food." And across the courtyard, Arya stood up and finally noticed him. She went very still for exactly 1 second. Then her eyes narrowed slightly, not with hostility, but with the particular expression of someone solving a problem they hadn't expected to encounter. "Mr. Seo?" She walked over slowly, the red shoes thwacking with every step. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about the event," he said. "I wanted to contribute." "How did you hear about it?" "I have contacts in the charitable sector." She looked at him for a long moment. The rubber nose had slid to one side again. She didn't push it up this time. "Uh-huh," she said. Then she reached into the van and produced a spatula, which she held out to him with the same energy as handing someone a difficult assignment. "I've got 200 hot dogs. You're on grill duty." Seo Tae-jun had at various points in his life negotiated with dangerous men in 3 languages, dismantled a rival operation in under 48 hours, and once remained perfectly composed while someone pointed a gun at him from across a boardroom table. He was not prepared for 200 hot dogs. The grill was a portable unit that had clearly lived a full and difficult life. Arya set it up with the confidence of someone who'd done it 50 times, lit it without ceremony, and handed him the first tray of sausages like she was issuing field instructions. "Tongs in your right hand. Don't press down on them, you'll lose the juice. Turn when the color changes on the bottom edge, not the top." She glanced at his shirt. "And maybe roll up those sleeves. That's a very serious shirt for a cookout." He looked down. "Brioni, $3,000. He rolled up the sleeves. He dropped the first sausage inside 30 seconds. "The ground is not a plate," Arya said without looking up from the buns she was arranging. He picked up the second one, managed to keep it on the grill for almost 2 full minutes before it slipped through the gap in the grate and disappeared into the coals below. "Mr. Seo?" "I see it. That's 2. I'm aware." He reached for the third one with perhaps too much focus and knocked the ketchup bottle off the side table. It hit the ground cap first and sent a dramatic red arc across the lower half of his shirt. Arya looked at the shirt, then at him, then back at the shirt. "Have you ever considered," she said carefully, "a career in demolition?" A boy of about 8 appeared at Taejun's elbow, staring up at him with open curiosity. "Are you really bad at cooking, or are you just pretending?" He's really bad, Arya said. I'm learning, Taejun said. The boy seemed to accept both answers as equally true. Are you rich? Taejun looked at him. Why do you ask? Because your watch costs more than Margaret's car. Tommy looked it up. He pointed across the yard to another boy who waved with complete lack of embarrassment. Are you? A little. Cool. Can you buy a dragon? There are no real dragons. Yes, there are. The boy turned. Arya said she saw one. Taejun looked across the grill at Arya, who had suddenly become very focused on the buns. Her shoulders were slightly raised, definitely trying not to laugh. Arya said that, he repeated. She tells the best stories, the boy said, completely sincere, then drifted away toward a table covered in paint supplies, apparently satisfied. Arya finally looked up. Her expression was perfectly neutral, except for the absolute absence of apology in her eyes. A dragon, he said. Kids need things to believe in. And you told him you'd seen one. I said what I said. She nodded toward the grill. You've got one about to roll off the left side. He caught it this time. By mid-afternoon, the yard had reached a particular kind of beautiful chaos. Children ran between tables. Paintings dried on a makeshift line strung between two trees, uneven, vivid, incomprehensible in the best way. The Bluetooth speaker had moved twice and was now balanced on an overturned bucket playing something with a lot of bass that several of the younger kids were dancing to with complete technical inaccuracy. Taejun found his rhythm eventually not elegance, but competence. He handed out hot dogs one at a time and received in return crayon drawings, highly specific questions about his occupation, and one very serious request from a girl named Sarah to hear him sing something which he declined. At some point, Margaret appeared at his side, refilling the condiment tray with the efficiency of someone who never stopped moving. Good of you to come, she said, not warmly exactly, more like a measured acknowledgement. Arya does this every week. Margaret didn't look at him. Every Friday. Saturdays when we need extra hands. A pause. For 2 years. Taejun watched Arya across the yard, currently mediating a dispute over the last blue crayon with the seriousness of a UN negotiator. She never mentioned it. No, Margaret said simply. She wouldn't. He wanted to ask more, but Margaret had already moved on unhurried to the next thing that needed doing. By the time the yard quieted down, children fed sugar-tired, drifting toward the indoor rooms in 2s and 3s. The late afternoon light had turned everything amber. Taejun and Arya gathered the debris in a comfortable silence that surprised him. In his experience, silence with another person always carried weight. Expectation. The tension of something unsaid. This was different. It was just quiet. Why do you do this? He asked. Arya picked up a burst balloon from beside a chair leg. Do what? All of it. Every Friday. Your own time. Your own money before today. He looked at her. What do you get out of it? She stopped moving, considered the question like it was genuinely unfamiliar, like no one had asked it before in quite that way. Someone has to, she said finally, and these kids deserve to smile. She started moving again. That's it. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. You don't get anything back. Arya straightened and looked at him directly. Yes, I do. No defensiveness in it. Just certainty. I get the best part of my day. Taejun had no response to that. He stood holding a trash bag in a courtyard in Brooklyn in a ketchup-stained shirt that cost more than the monthly operating budget of the building behind him, and he had absolutely nothing to say. That almost never happened. On the drive back, the city was loud and golden in the early evening. Daniel said nothing when Taejun returned, just noted the shirt and the time, and made no comment on either. Later that night, he found the file Daniel had quietly left on his desk. Background information standard format. He'd asked for it that afternoon without saying why. Arya Simone Williams, age 28. Current employment. He skipped ahead and stopped at one line. Resident Hope House Shelter and Support, ages 4 to 18. Primary guardian listed Margaret Collins, director. He read it again, then set the file down on the desk and looked at it for a long time without picking it up. She hadn't just chosen that place. She'd gone back to it. Every week for 2 years, she'd returned to the building that raised her not out of obligation, not for recognition, just because Margaret always needed an extra pair of hands, and she knew exactly what it meant to be one of those kids waiting inside. He thought about the girl with the scraped knee, the purple bandage with gold stars, 3 jumps. He thought about the way Arya laughed completely without managing it. His phone lit up on the desk. Encrypted channel. A message he'd been half expecting. We see who you've been spending time with, Seo. Careful who you bring close. He stared at the screen. Outside, 43 floors down New York, moved on without him. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Seo Taijun felt something he didn't have immediate plans to suppress. Worry. For someone else. He found her the next morning in the kitchen. She was scrubbing a pan with the focused energy of someone settling a personal score, humming something off-key that might have been a country song or might have been entirely invented. She didn't hear him come in. Arya? She startled, turned, spatula raised slightly on instinct. Mr. Seo? She lowered the spatula. You can't just, I could have thrown this. You were going to attack me with a spatula. I was going to defend myself with a spatula. There's a difference. She set it down. What do you need? Coffee, he said. Not here, somewhere outside. She looked at him the way she'd looked at him in the courtyard the day before, that particular expression that was equal parts assessment and mild concern for his mental health. Coffee. Us. Outside. Yes. Mr. Seo, are you going through something? Because yesterday you showed up at Hope House out of nowhere, and today you want to get coffee with the housekeeper, and I'm starting to think, are you in or not? A pause. She looked down at her clothes jeans, a faded gray sweatshirt cleaning product on the cuff. I'm not exactly dressed for wherever you usually go. I'm not taking you where I usually go. She thought about it for 3 more seconds, then untied her apron and hung it on the hook by the stove. Fine, but I'm ordering the cheap coffee. I was counting on it. The cafe was on a quiet block in Carroll Gardens, small, slightly worn at the edges, the kind of place that had been there for 30 years and intended to stay for 30 more. Taijun had found it the night before, deliberately. Somewhere no one would recognize him. Somewhere he could just sit. They took a corner table. Arya wrapped both hands around her mug and stirred in sugar with more energy than was strictly necessary. So, she said, not quite meeting his eyes, is this the famous rich people coffee? Because it tastes exactly like what Mrs. Patterson makes at the bakery 2 blocks from my apartment. Same supplier, Taejun said. I checked. She looked up. You actually checked? I wanted somewhere that felt normal. That landed differently than he'd intended. She was quiet for a moment, reading him. Then she took a sip, made a face. Still not as pretentious as that Italian machine in your kitchen. That thing sounds like it's having an existential crisis every morning. Taejun laughed, not the short, controlled sound he produced in meetings. Something real. It caught him slightly off guard. Arya noticed. She tilted her head and looked at him with an expression he couldn't immediately categorize. You should do that more often, she said. Do what? Smile like you mean it. The cafe was quiet around them. Someone's music played low from a speaker near the counter. Outside, the street went about its business. Tell me about growing up there, he said. At Hope House. She went still for a moment, set her mug down carefully. Daniel told you. The file was standard procedure. She wasn't angry, just recalibrating. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. She looked at the table, then out the window, then at him, and something in her expression settled like a decision being made. It was good, she said simply. Not easy, but good. Margaret made sure of that. A small smile. She has this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room, even when the room is full. I used to think that was just how adults were." She paused. Took me a while to figure out it was just her. Taejun said nothing. Listened. I always said I'd come back when I could. Help the way she helped me. Arya shrugged, not dismissively, just honestly. So I do. He looked at her across the small table and thought that this was the most straightforward conversation he'd had in years. No positioning, no subtext, just a person saying exactly what was true. It made him briefly ashamed of his own world. 3 days after the cards expired, Taejun called the meeting. The penthouse living room had been arranged with 4 chairs, deliberate, facing inward. Daniel stood near the window. By 10 in the morning, all 4 women had arrived. Cassandra came first tablet, ready posture perfect. Raina arrived in sunglasses despite being indoors. Vivienne entered last, precisely 10 minutes late, wearing a smile that had clearly been prepared in advance. Arya came from the kitchen, hands still damp, apron over one shoulder. She looked at the arrangement of chairs and sat in the nearest one without ceremony. Taejun stood in the center and said it plainly. 3 days ago, I gave each of you a black card as a gift. That wasn't the whole truth. It was an experiment. I wanted to see what each of you would do with unlimited freedom. Silence. Then Vivienne laughed low, impressed, not entirely displeased. Of course it was. Cassandra closed her tablet with a soft click. I'd like to note my objection to the methodology. Raina took off her sunglasses. Arya looked at the other 3, then at Taejun. I thought it was a thank you. I know, he said. Tell us what you did with it. She blinked. I bought stuff for the kids at Hope House, food supplies, toys. A pause. And the hot dogs. The hot dogs, Vivienne repeated with a particular softness that had nothing kind in it. How lovely. Cassandra leaned forward slightly. Grace, Arya, what you did is admirable, but you have to admit from a strategic perspective. I bought rice and diapers, Arya said. What's the strategy conversation here? The point, Vivienne said smooth as glass, is that it's interesting. The timing, the charity, the fact that our employer was watching. She smiled. It's actually a very intelligent move when you think about it. Arya looked at her. What move? Performing generosity for someone who has the power to change your circumstances. Vivienne tilted her head. We're just saying it would be understandable. The room was very quiet. Arya was still for a moment. Then she laughed genuinely briefly, like the accusation was too absurd to absorb any other way. You think I planned this? To impress him? She looked around the room. By buying hot dogs. We're not accusing, Cassandra said carefully. I've been going to Hope House every Friday for 2 years, Arya said, before I worked here, before I'd ever heard the name Seo Taejun. She looked at each of them in turn. Unless I have the ability to see the future, I think we can let the conspiracy go. Vivienne's smile didn't move. Still, you used his money for personal commitments. That's worth examining. Arya stood up. You chartered a jet for a pool photo, she said. Quiet. Even. She spent $6,000 on shoes. You commissioned a gala that hasn't fed a single person yet. She looked at Taejun one last time. Next time you want to test someone's character, Mr. Seo, be more careful about who's in the room. Some people here are much better actors than you realize. She walked out. The others left shortly after. Taejun stood at the window. Daniel waited. That night, the second message arrived on the encrypted channel. Cleaner than the first. No ambiguity. A photograph. Arya outside Hope House taken from a distance. Timestamp from 2 days ago. Last warning. Cut it off. Or we will. Taejun stared at the image for a long time. Then he made a decision he told himself was the right one. The next morning, he found her in the kitchen. She looked up with the easy expression of someone who'd slept well and held no grudges. He didn't meet her eyes. I'm restructuring the household schedule, he said. His voice was flat, managed. You'll be reassigned to mornings only. You won't need to be here when I'm home in the evenings. Arya set down the dish she was holding, carefully. Did I do something wrong? Silence. Mr. Seo? Nothing. She looked at him for a long moment. He kept his eyes on the window, on the city, on anything except her face. She picked up her cloth, folded it neatly, placed it on the counter. You don't scare me, she said quietly, but you do disappoint me. And she walked out. The kitchen had never been louder in its silence. It took Taejun 4 days to handle it. He didn't sleep much during those 4 days. He worked methodically, efficiently, the way he always worked when he needed his hands busy and his mind clear. Daniel asked no questions, just appeared when needed, disappeared when not, and left coffee outside the office door at 2 a.m. without being asked. On the 5th day, it was done. Taejun sat at his desk in the early quiet and looked at nothing in particular for a while. Then he said without turning around, "Find her." Daniel, who had been standing near the door for the past 10 minutes in silence, simply said, "Yes, sir." A pause. "She's at Hope House." "Of course she is." He drove himself again. It was a Saturday morning. The street was unhurried, a woman walking a dog, 2 kids on bicycles, someone sweeping a front step with the patience of someone who had nowhere else to be. Taejun parked and sat for a moment. Through the side window of the building, he could see the faint movement of colored children painting at a long table. Arya moving between them, leaning down to look at something, nodding with exaggerated seriousness at whatever she was being shown. He got out of the car. Margaret was at the front entrance before he reached it. She had a cup of tea in one hand and the particular stillness of someone who had expected him. "Mr. Seo? I need to see Arya." Margaret looked at him, not unkindly, but with the clear-eyed precision of someone who had spent 40 years determining quickly and accurately what people were made of. "She doesn't need an explanation," Margaret said. "She needs the truth." He held her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." A beat. Margaret stepped aside. Arya saw him from across the room. She didn't move immediately, just looked at him with an expression that was carefully, deliberately neutral. Then she said something quietly to the child beside her, set down her brush, and walked over. They stood in the hallway. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "You don't owe me anything." "Arya." She waited. He told her. Not everything there were things she didn't need to carry, but enough. The message, the photograph, the threat that had her name attached to it simply because she existed in proximity to him. He told her plainly without dressing it up, because she was someone who deserved plainness. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "So, you pushed me away to protect me," she said. "Yes." "Without telling me." "Yes." She looked at him steadily. "That wasn't your decision to make." "I know. I'm not something you manage, Mr. Seo. I'm a person. No heat in it, just clarity. Next time you talk to me." "There won't be a next time." "You can't promise that." "No," he said. "But I handled it. And I'm asking, not telling, if you'll let me make it right." He took a breath. "I want to fund Hope House properly. A full charity event, real infrastructure, enough to keep Margaret running this place for the next decade without worrying about the budget." He paused. "But I need you to present the project, to the donors, to the room." Arya stared at him. "Me? You? I can barely order food on the phone without rehearsing it twice. You talk to 20 children through a clown costume and a series of exploding balloons. You can do this." She pressed her lips together. Somewhere behind her, a child called her name. She held up one finger without turning around, the universal signal that meant 1 minute I'm handling something, and kept her eyes on Taejun. "We practice," she said finally. "Every morning, starting tomorrow. And if I'm terrible, you won't be. But if I am, then I'll be right there," he said. "Same as always." She was terrible at first. She talked to the pots, addressed the blender as distinguished guests, dropped her notes into a bowl of batter she'd forgotten was on the counter. Once Taijun arrived to find her standing in front of the Italian espresso machine, delivering an impassioned 3-minute segment about funding models for residential care programs. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked when she spotted him. "Since you told the machine it represented the future of philanthropic investment." She covered her face with both hands, but she got better. Every morning she got better, not because she became polished, but because she stopped trying to be. She found her own rhythm, her own words, the version of the story that was entirely and only hers. 2 weeks later, the grand ballroom at the Mandarin Oriental held 300 guests, CEOs, city officials, journalists, the kind of room that measured people by their net worth before they'd finished shaking hands. Taejun stood near the back, Daniel beside him. Vivienne arrived with Raina. Cassandra came alone. All three found seats without looking at him. Arya walked onto the stage in a simple ivory dress, the one she'd spent 20 minutes trying to talk herself out of buying because it felt too much. She reached the microphone, looked out at the room. Her hands were still at her sides. Then she abandoned the script entirely. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Arya Williams, and I grew up in the orphanage we're here to support tonight." The room shifted. 300 people recalibrating. "I know you're used to presentations with charts and projections," she continued, her voice steadied as she went. "I have some of those, but I want to start with something else." She paused. "I want to tell you what it feels like to be 8 years old and watch the door every Friday afternoon, because Friday was visiting day, and every week I told myself this Friday someone comes for me." Complete silence. Margaret Collins walked into the room instead, every time, not because she had to, because she chose to. Arya's voice was even. She still chooses it, every single day, for every child who is currently sitting in that building right now waiting. In the third row, Cassandra pressed 2 fingers to her mouth, eyes down. Vivienne stood quietly and slipped out through a side door. Nobody else moved. By the time Arya finished the pledges, the room exceeded anything Taijun had projected, not because of the numbers she cited or the strategy she outlined, because 300 people had just been reminded of something they'd been carefully insulating themselves from for years, that somewhere nearby children were waiting, and choosing to show up for them cost nothing but the decision to do it. Afterward, the celebration moved to Hope House. Margaret had insisted, "No fancy venue, right here." The yard was lit with strings of warm light. A local band played something easy and unhurried. The children ran between the adults with handmade paper lanterns that shed more shadow than light, but were carried with enormous pride. Daniel and Margaret sat together near the far table, deep in conversation over a plate of food, laughing at something with the ease of 2 people who'd known each other for 5 minutes and felt like 20 years. Taijun found Arya near the rose bushes at the edge of the yard. She'd taken off her heels, was holding them in one hand, watching the children with the expression of someone completely simply happy. He stood beside her. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then she looked up at him. "You okay?" "More than I've been in a long time." She smiled, looked back at the yard. He turned toward her, and before the careful, controlled part of his brain could construct a reason to wait, he spoke first in Korean, low, quiet, the language he only used when something was real. Arya turned. "What did you just say?" He lowered himself onto one knee. The yard exploded. Tommy shouted from across the garden, "He's proposing. Margaret, he's proposing." Several children broke from their lantern rote and sprinted over, arriving in a semicircle before Taejun had fully finished reaching into his jacket pocket. He looked up at Arya. Her hands were over her mouth, eyes bright. "Arya Williams," he said. "You walked into my life holding a bowl of dough and asked if you were fired. You told a child you'd seen a dragon. You reminded me what it felt like to be in a room with someone who wanted nothing from me except honesty." He opened the box. "I have not been easy. I'm probably not going to get easier. But I will spend every day making sure you never have to face anything alone again." A pause. "Will you?" "Yes," she said. before he'd finished. I was still asking. I know. She was laughing and crying at the same time, reaching for his hand. The answer was yes before you started. Tommy turned to the crowd of children behind him. She said yes. I heard, said Michael. I said it first. Tae-jun slid the ring onto her finger and stood. She threw her arms around him, not carefully, not gracefully, and he held on. From across the yard in Korean, just loud enough. Finally! He didn't have to look to know it was Daniel. So that's the story of Seo Tae-jun and Arya Williams, a man who had everything and still couldn't find one person who saw him clearly, and a woman who had almost nothing by the world's measure and gave it away every Friday anyway. He tested 4 women to find out who was real, and the answer came from the one person who never once tried to be anything other than exactly herself. No strategy, no performance, just a purple bandage with gold stars and 200 hot dogs for kids who deserve to smile. Here's what stays with me about this story. Arya didn't give because she had extra. She gave because she remembered what it felt like to need, and that's a kind of wealth that never shows up on any card, black or otherwise. The most powerful thing in this story isn't Tae-jun's money or his influence or the threats he dismantled without blinking. It's a woman standing in front of 300 strangers saying, I grew up here. And these children are worth showing up for. That changed a room. That changed a man. Maybe it's worth asking, when was the last time you showed up for something that gave you nothing back, except the knowledge that it mattered? Leave your answer in the comments. And tell me, what score would you give this story? 0 to 10. I want to know what hit you hardest. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and turn on notifications. There are more stories coming that I think you'll want to be here for. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
And that's where their story takes distance, but the love in the shadow is never truly over. If this story made your heart race, hit the like button and subscribe to Korean Mafia Heart, where every love story is dangerous, passionate, and impossible to forget. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Now, tell me in the comment, are you team him or team her? Who do you think she will choose in the end? Stay with me. On Korean Mafia Heart, love is the most dangerous game of all.